Good evening, everyone. A very special evening. Historically, B'dika night is a night that Yeshua's happened for Klal Yisrael. Darshanim throughout the ages, throughout the millennia, said Orlo Abba Aser Baikin as Aner. It is representative of the Bar Mitzvah boy. Orla Arba Aser, on the evening of his beginning, embarking on his 14th year, he's 13. Baikin as now that he's giving a Yetzer Tov and everything counts. So he's Baikin as how? La'aner. And or Elatayra, right? Kiner Mitzvah, Elatayra or. And we know that the annual search for chametz is supposed to represent the way we seek out and try to look at what our specific Yetzer Hara is. That's a job. There is a contradiction. On the one hand, the Ezel Gibar Kodesh is Yitzray. The Gibar is somebody that conquers his Yetzer Hara. The problem is Ein Adam Raya Nigei Atzmai. It's hard to see our own faults. You know, the cheap man doesn't think he's cheap. He thinks he's normal. Everybody else sees he's really cheap. But he doesn't think he's cheap. He thinks he's normal. Sometimes he thinks he's smart. It's like the person says, in our family, the custom is to keep the money to ourselves. Smart man. I've known cheap people, and they don't think they're cheap. They don't think they're cheap. The Sefer Hasidim says that a woman, when she's dating, should stay away from a cheap man. So, my daughters used to ask me, Tati, how are we going to know? So I said, well, a good sign is if you go out to a restaurant and he says, why don't we order something and share? So you already get a little bit of, or it's freezing cold outside, and he says to you, you don't mind walking 10 blocks, I found this spot, right? So you get a little bit of a clue that he might not be generous. He might not be generous. But cheap is just one thing. Anger. I've seen angry people that just... A woman called me up that her husband, when he gets angry, throws things in the house. And the paint is peeling off the walls. So she said, maybe you could talk in shul about anger. So I gave a share. I said that Rav Miller says that kas is the same letters as eches, which is poison. And that it says, Kalakayes kol mine gehenim sholtem bay. He'll need all the treatments of Gehenna. And, I have very good peripheral vision. Thanks. I have very good peripheral vision. It's very, very important for a ball player to have good peripheral vision because then you can see what's going on your side, So I look, with the corner of my eye, and this person is nodding his head, agreeing with everything I said. Mamish, he's nodding. And the answer is that Ava Vashana Nasala Kahata. Do it enough times, it becomes like you don't even realize what you're doing. And everybody has their... So tonight, when we're Baidik Chametz, that's the reminder. Like it says, we're supposed to check our pockets. So it's brought down that's symbolic of how we with our money. The honesty of our money, the generosity of our money, it's How are we with our money? Told you a sad story I had. I had this story. There was a husband. He refused to make his wife a new kitchen. They had a kitchen that, was straight out from the old kitchens in the East Side, in the beginning of the 1900s. And he said, it was good for my mother, such a kitchen, you don't need a new kitchen. So he had the money. So I told him, a wife lives in the kitchen, and she feels good if it's updated, if it's modern. He died. She remarried a poor fellow who inherited the husband's money, and her second husband made the new kitchen. As shaykh that if the first husband would have made the new kitchen, maybe he wouldn't have died. It's a person has to be baide kesakisen. A person has to be, person has to, check how they are with their eyes. Shmiras Einayim today is a very big challenge. Very big. It's one of the challenges of our generation. And person has to see how they are with laziness. There's a lot of things. So tonight, now, the best way to fight the fire of the Yetzer Hara is a fire. The best way to fight fire is with fire. It's Torah. So it's interesting that tonight, on the night of B'dika, you have this really long Mishna. We're not in a rush anyway, because tonight we're specifically not in a rush because we really can't start B'dika until 8:14. That's stays. And until 8:14, you're really not supposed to eat. So, really, to sit down, even you're not supposed to learn. But here we're allowed to do it because we have a minyan kavua, and so here we could do it. Kizayis Basar. Oh, you see, I'm busy talking away, and we're learning. Sponsored by Fisher family, Nishmas Basi Bas Rabbi Shlomo ben Avram Alevi, Perel Bas Ruvain. Also learning Lili Nishmas, David ben Chaim, Lefu Shalem for Yomis ben Chaisar, Yaakov ben Basi Aleah, Schutz of Avram and Yom Benish ben Malki Hudis and family, by Yol Klugman and family, and Lefu Shalem for Moshe Meir ben Esther Fradel, Rivka Bashir Aleah, Abigduraya ben Rivka, Dvar Bas Shashabina, Meir ben Chaisar. They should all have a Refu Shalem of B'sech Shachal Yisrael. So we know an aver minachai, a limb from a live person, is metame. What about a kazayas of meat that's separated from the limb of a live person? Kazayas basar aporesh me'aver minachai, a kazayas of meat that separates from a limb that was amputated. Rabbi Eliezer metame. Rabbi Eliezer says it's tame. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Nechunya metar. And Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Nechunya say it's tar. Now, etzem kisa'oira haporesh me'aver minachai. So here we have a switch of opinions. A bone the size of a barley corn that separates from me'aver minachai. Rabbi Nechunya metame, and Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua metarin. So here we have, just to watch the opinions. When it comes to the flesh, Rabbi Eliezer is metame, and Rabbi Nechunya is metar. When it comes to the bone, Rabbi Nechunya is metame and Rabbi Eliezer is metar. And Rabbi Yeshua holds they're both tahar. Okay. Amrullah the Rabbi Eliezer. So they said to Rabbi Eliezer, Mora is l'tame kazayis basar aparish me'evim menachai. What's your source for being metame a piece of meat that separates from an evim menachai? Amalahem. So he said to them, Matzinu evim menachai kemeis shalom. We find that an evim menachai is analogous. It's the same thing as a corpse. Mohameis, just like a corpse, ksayis basar aparish mimenu tameh, a ksayis basar that separates from it is tameh. Af Eiver min achai, so also Eiver min achai, which is similar to a corpse, it's matame even ba'oil, is kazayas basar aparish mimenu yotame. Amru lai, so they said, not so fast. Lai. Im timesa kazayas basar aparish min ameis. If you're matame kazayas basar that separates min ameis, shekain timesa etzem kasayra aparish mimenu. You're also matame a bone the size of a barley corn that separates from it. Tetame k'zayis basar aparish min eiver min achai. Why should a k'zayis basar that separates from an eiver min achai be tame? You say that it's different than a mace by the bone. Shekain tiarta etzem kisayra aparish mimenu. You said that a bone the size of a barley corn is star. So you see, it's not the same as a mace. Amru lai. Then they said Reb Nechunya. Now they picked on Reb Nechunya. Remember, Reb Nechunya says that an etzem kisayra that comes from a Eiver min achai is tamei. Amalei Reb Nechunya, Mora isla tamei etzem kisayra parish me'Eiver min achai. Why am I tamei etzem kisayra? Amalehem. Well, again the same logic. Matzinu Eiver min achai k'mei shalom. The Eiver min achai is similar to a mei shalom. Ma meis etzem kisayra parish mimenu tamei. Af Eiver min achai etzem kisayra parish mimenu tamei. So again, they said to him, not so fast. Amalei loi. Im temeisa etzem kisayra parish min ameis. That's because a k'zayis basar is tamei. Shekain temeisa k'zayis basar aparish mimenu. Tetamei etzem kisayra parish me'Eiver min achai, because you said a k'zayis basar of Eiver min achai is tar. Shekain ta'arta k'zayis basar aparish mimenu. So it's not similar to the Mei Shalom. Now, Amru Leilu Rebbe Eliezer, they asked Rebbe Eliezer, Taka, why do you split your decision? Why do you say a kazayas basar of an Eiver min achai is tamei, but an etzem kisa'ira of an Eiver min achai is tar? So Amru Leilu Rebbe Eliezer, look at this long Mishnah. Amru Leilu Rebbe Eliezer, Mora isi lacha loik midoi secha. Why do you have a split decision? Oy tamei b'shneim, if you're going to compare it to a mace, so they should be both tamei. Or if you're not going to compare it to mace, oy tar b'shneim, or they should be both tar. Why do you say a kazayas basar is tamei, but an etzem kisayra is tar? Why? Well, says Rebbe Eliezer, you see, the tumah of basar is more than the tumah of bone. Amalahem meruba tumas habasar, tumas ha'atzamis. The tumah of basar is more than the tumah of bone. This has to be one of the longest mishnayos. The tumah of basar has to be more than the tumah of bone. Shabasar noyeg ben avelis, a kazayas basar of an animal corpse is tamei, or b'shratzim, and a kadosha basar of one of the Shemona Shratzim is tamei. Masha ein came b'atzamis. That's not true. The bone of nevelos and atzamis are not tamei. Davar achar. Another difference between basar and bone. Aver sheyesh of basar karai. A aver that has, even if it doesn't have, first it says a limb that has basar, metame b'mago b'masa boy. It's metame b'maga, b'masa, and boil. A touch if you carry it, and if you're under the same roof with it. Chaser abasar, even if it's lacking some of the meat, as long as there's enough that it would regenerate, if it would be alive, it would regenerate, tameh. Chaser ha'etzem, but once some of the bone is missing, tar. So you see that bone is more lenient than basar. By basar we say even if it's missing, but it would be able to regenerate its tummy. That's not true by bone. Now, the Mishnah is not finished. Now they ask Reb Nechunya, why do you split it the other way? You say that an etzem kisayra of a Eiver min achai is tamei, but a kazayas basar is tar. Why do you split it? Either say both are tamei, or tar b'shneim. Look how long this Mishnah is. This is a one Mishnah. Gedalia should have charged more. I'll tell you. Should have put up the easy pass more. Amalahem. Torah should always be free, Rabbi say. Torah is nitna b'midbar. Should know that's why the Chachamim always looked for ways to give the Rabbanim money. People say, he's going to charge for this, he's going to charge for that. They always looked for ways to give the Rabbanim money which wasn't for Torah. That's where the Mechiras Chametz came in, and paying by a chasana and by a levaya. It looks crazy. What Rabbi's going to charge for a levaya, for a chasana? It looks callous. Of course it's not for the levaya or the chasana. But because they didn't want to say that they were paying for Torah, right? Because it says, Mishtamish b'saga cholif, it's not safe. So of course, years ago, there wasn't a salary for Rabbanim. In the last several hundred years, it became instituted, there should be, and it was defined as schar bittel. Schar bittel means the same way, really you're not allowed to pay a doctor. A Yiddish doctor is not allowed to take money. Because healing somebody is Hashavas Aveda. You're not allowed to charge for Hashavas Aveda. But there's no doctor, and doctors aren't like Rabbanim. There's no doctor that people come in and don't pay. If you don't pay, you don't get cured. But what is it? The doctor is allowed to take schar bittel. That means that he could have been doing something else, so you could pay him for the fact that he's not doing something else. So then how come he's allowed to take for the procedure? The answer is because he could have been doing it with a guy. And a guy, you're allowed to take money. There's no mitzvah Hashavas Aveda for a guy. So his schar bittel is that he could have done it. So therefore, if you have a Rav that could play first base for the New York Yankees, so then his schar bittel is very big, right? I once got, this is a very long time ago, you have to really know computers to know this, but I'm with computers for a very long time. So my first computer was an IBM AT, and I belonged at that time to CompuServe.com. And on CompuServe, this is going back to the end of the 80s, right?
That was after the XT or before the XT?
Huh? AT and XTs come out at the same time. Yeah, but it's after Radio Shack, after the Tandy. Tandy came first. But that came first. But it's still with the dot matrix printers. It's tearing all those things off. But anyway, this is really going back in history. But anyway, so on CompuServe.com, there was a chess forum. So I did a teaching game. What's called is that you played somebody, and after every move, you gave an explanation for your move. So I'm a Baal Masber. So I gave an explanation. It's called a teaching move. I made a move, and I said, I'm doing this in order to protect this, and in order to make way to castle, and in order to line up against a certain pawn. I always gave a hesber for every move. So I get an invitation. This is open. It was open to. I get an invitation from the New York City public school teachers that they want to hire me to teach chess in a series of public schools. So I told them I'm already gainfully employed, but I remember I told my Rebbetzin Aleh Shalom, this offer goes into the schar bittel portfolio. It goes into the schar bittel portfolio. So so then one day they offered me a job in one of the hotels if I want to be a coach for tennis. I said, this goes into the schar bittel portfolio. Now you collect the schar bittel portfolio. But anyway, I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm so. He would call me garrulous, but okay. So Abu Layla Reb Nechemia, they said to Reb Nechemia, "Ma ra'isa lach loik midoisecha." Why do you split your decision? Oitame b'shneim, either say both the bas kazayis baser of the Eiver Menachai and the etzem kisayir of the Eiver Menachai is tamei. Oitame b'shneim. Why do you say that the bone is tamei? Mamash opposite of Rebbe Eliezer. You say the bone is tamei, but the kazayis baser is tar. So Amalahem, so he said to them, Meruba tumas ha'atzamis mitumas ha'basa. I hold adirabba, that the tumah of bone is more than the tumah of meat. Sha'basa ha'pirish menachai tahar. Because meat that's pirish menachai, just meat that's pirish without the limb is tahar. Ve'ever ha'pirish mimenu, but a limb that's pirish, as long as it has bone in it, v'hu k'briyasai, and it is the way it was as it was created, is tameh. Davar achar, kazayis basar metame b'maga b'masel b'oyel. A kazayis basar is metame, touch, carrying an oil, v'roivat samais, the majority of the bones, since there are 248, so the majority is 135, 130, am I right about 125? Majority is 125. Mitamim b'magam b'masul b'oil. Chaser ha'basar, if the basar is less than a kazayis tar. Chaser roivat samais, if there's a lack of the majority of bones, and this majority of bones is either the majority of the skeletal frame or the majority of the number of bones, even though it's tar to be mitame ba'oil, still it's mitame b'maga b'masa. So you see, bone is more chamer. Davar achar, kol b'sar ha'meishu pachas mikazayis tar. All of the flesh of a mace, which is less than a kazayis, is tar. But roiv binyanai v'roiv minyanai shel mace, the majority of the skeletal structure, or the majority of the number, like we said, 125, afal pi she'ein bahem roiva, even if there isn't a shear of a quarter of a calf, is tameim. So you see that bone is more chamer than basar. Now, it's still going. I wonder, I have to look and see if this is the longest Mishnah in Shas. Amru Layla Reb Yeshua, so they said to Reb Yeshua, Mora Isa L'tar B'shneim. I mean, you argue on both Reb Eliezer and Nechemia, you say by a amputated limb, both the kazayis basar and an etzem kazayis tar. Why are you matar by both? Amalahem, so loy. It's not a good comparison. They both make a comparison to a meis shalom. Im amartem b'meis sheyesh by roiv v'roiva v'rekev. A mace has a din of the majority of its bones, or a quarter of a kav of bones, or a quarter of a kav of corpse dust. Timer b'chai, but by an amputated part of the body, there's no such din as she'ein by roiv v'roiva v'rekev. There's no majority of the bones. There's no quarter of a kav of bones, and there's no quarter of a kav of decomposed minachai, and therefore it's not comparable to a mace. And since it's not comparable to a mace, you cannot extrapolate that the kazayis basar or the etzem kasayra should be tameh. The next Mishnah is much smaller. Hey, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Tzadik al Pidyon Peter Chamor. Now we know that there's a din, right? Nagaya Pesach, right? The donkeys were rewarded because we took out, each one of us, 90 donkeys of the Rechush Gadol, and therefore a firstborn donkey you have to redeem. If you don't redeem it, you have to break its neck. So here, Yaakov likes his donkey. So he redeemed it. Before he could give the sheep to the Kayin, the sheep dies. Does he have to give another sheep? So Heyed Rabbi Shuvah Reb Tzadik al Pidyon Petach Hamor Shemeis She'ein Bay LaKayin Klum. He doesn't have to give another sheep to the Kayin. He just gives him the corpse, the nevela of the dead sheep. Rabbi Eliezer holds that he would have to give him another sheep. And Kichamei Shlom Shel Ben. Rabbi Eliezer says it's like the 5 shkalim. That if you have a pidyon ben and you separate 5 shkalim and you lose it, you have to give another 5 shkalim. The Chachamim Maimim ein chayavim b'achriv yusan ela kepidyon shel ma'aser sheni. If you redeemed your ma'aser sheni, to bring it up to Yerushalayim, and you lost the redemption, you don't have to redeem it again. So here too, if you redeemed it with a sheep, and the sheep died, or it got lost, you don't have to give the Kayin another sheep. Rabbi Hananiah ben Akasha Amar